The attic smelled of dust and memories. Emily Parker pushed aside a stack of moth-eaten blankets and pulled out an old wooden box that looked as though it hadn't been touched in decades. Its surface was scratched, its brass lock rusted, but when she lifted the lid, she found treasures of a life long gone. Yellowed letters tied with ribbon, a cracked silver locket, and an aged photograph so fragile she feared it would crumble in her hands. The label on the back read simply, Lawrence, 1901. The photograph captured a gathering of townspeople outside a general store. Men in bowler hats, women in long dresses, children clinging to their mothers' skirts. Everyone appeared ordinary, smiling faintly, frozen in a moment of history. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual, but as Emily squinted at the edges, a strange shiver ran through her. Something about this picture wasn't right. Emily sat by the attic window, the photograph trembling in her fingers. Most of the figures were perfectly clear, but in the far corner, half hidden behind a man's shoulder, stood a boy who seemed different. His face was oddly blurred, though the rest of the photo remained sharp. His eyes, though shadowed, carried a sorrow that seemed out of place among the faint smiles. His clothing was ragged, far shabbier than the others, and he stood alone, separated from the group. It was as if the boy had been placed there after the fact, or didn't quite belong. Emily turned the photo over again, hoping for more context. In her grandmother's shaky handwriting were 4 words. Find the forgotten boy. Her chest tightened. Forgotten boy? Who was he? And why had her grandmother left this cryptic message for her to discover? The next day, unable to silence her curiosity, Emily visited the Lawrence County Library. She presented the photo to Mrs. Green, the elderly archivist who had worked there for nearly 40 years. At first, Mrs. Green smiled, reminiscing about the town's old days. But when her eyes landed on the blurred boy, her smile faded. She leaned closer, her hands trembling slightly. "Oh, dear, you found him," she whispered. Emily's pulse quickened. "Who is he?" Mrs. Green lowered her voice, as though speaking his name too loudly might awaken something. "That's Samuel Reed," she said. "A child no one was supposed to remember." Mrs. Green hesitated before continuing, as if weighing whether to burden Emily with secrets. "Samuel Reed was an orphan," she said softly. "His father died in the mill accident of '99. His mother, no one knows. He wandered the streets, begging for scraps, wearing the same tattered clothes winter after winter." Emily pictured the boy from the photo standing apart, unnoticed. "One summer day in 1901, Mrs. Green continued, he vanished. No search parties, no posters. The town just carried on. They said he was cursed, that bad luck followed wherever he went." She shook her head sadly. "But really, he was just a boy who had no one." Emily felt a pang of guilt, though Samuel had lived more than a century before her. Why would her grandmother want her to find him? And why had the town erased him from memory? Back in her grandmother's attic, Emily searched the box again, determined to uncover more. Beneath the locket and faded letters, she found a folded envelope, yellowed with age. Inside was a note dated August 1901, addressed to Clara, her great-grandmother. The handwriting was urgent, hurried. "Clara, you are the only one who knows the truth about Samuel. Keep this secret until the world is ready. He deserved better. One day, someone in our family must tell his story." Emily sat frozen, the words echoing in her mind. Her grandmother must have kept this letter hidden, waiting for someone, perhaps Emily herself, to discover it. A strange responsibility settled on her shoulders. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was legacy. Emily taught history at the local middle school. As she stood before her students, talking about the struggles of children during the Industrial Revolution, her mind kept drifting back to Samuel. How many of her students felt unseen like he had? a boy in the back who never raised his hand, a girl who always ate lunch alone. The echoes were there, rippling across time. Maybe finding Samuel wasn't just about the past. Maybe it was about now, about noticing the invisible children, the forgotten ones, still among them. Her conscience whispered, "You've been chosen to carry his story. Don't ignore it." That night, Emily tossed and turned. The photograph lay on her nightstand, the boy's blurred face turned toward her. At some point, she slipped into a dream. In the dream, the photograph was alive. The townspeople shifted, their faint smiles melting away. One by one, their faces blurred, except Samuel's. His small figure stepped forward, his lips parting as though he had waited more than a century to speak. His voice was barely a whisper. "Don't let them forget me." Emily woke with tears streaking her cheeks and her heart pounding. Dream or not, the message was clear. She could no longer dismiss this as coincidence. The following day, Emily requested access to the Lawrence County archives. She combed through brittle census records, birth registries, and town reports. Samuel Reed appeared once in the 1900 census, listed as orphan age 8. After that, his name vanished completely. No death certificate, no adoption record, no trace. It was as though he had been erased from history. Emily ran her fingers along the faded ink. "Where did you go, Samuel?" she whispered. The silence of the archives offered no answer, but her determination hardened. Someone, long ago, had wanted his story buried. She would dig until she found it. Mr. Holloway, a retired historian, agreed to meet Emily at a local cafe. His hands shook as he held the photo. "I was told never to speak of this boy," he said quietly, "but I'm old now, and truth weighs heavy." He explained that Samuel was the son of a mill worker who died in a factory explosion. With no parents, Samuel became the town's burden. Instead of helping him, they whispered of curses and turned him away. "He wasn't cursed," Holloway muttered bitterly. "He was abandoned." That was the real curse. Emily felt anger rising. A child punished simply for existing, erased because it was easier than caring. Before they parted, Mr. Holloway slid a brittle leather-bound book across the table. "Your great-grandmother Clara kept this," he said. That night, Emily opened the journal and found her ancestors' handwriting. Clara wrote about Samuel often. "His shoes are torn. He shivers in the cold. I sneak bread to him when no one sees." The entries grew darker. They whisper he is cursed. They say he brings bad luck. Then the final chilling entry. They plan to send him away tonight. Somewhere dark. I am afraid for him. I cannot stop them. Emily's blood ran cold. Samuel hadn't just disappeared, he had been taken. Emily could hardly sleep after reading Clara's final diary entry. The words, "send him away tonight," haunted her like a thunderstorm rumbling in the distance. Where had they sent him? And why did no record exist? Clara's journal mentioned an old workhouse at the river's edge. Determined, Emily drove out to the crumbling ruins of the long-abandoned building. The windows were shattered, ivy coiling like veins across the stone walls. Inside, the air was damp, heavy with the smell of rust and mildew. As she stepped through the dark corridors, her flashlight beam caught faint etchings on the walls. Names carved by small hands, numbers scratched in desperation. Then her light froze on a single word dug deep into stone. Samuel. Emily's throat tightened. He had been there. He hadn't just disappeared. He'd been hidden away, forgotten by everyone except a girl named Clara, who tried to protect him. Standing in the ruin, Emily's knees felt weak. She touched the cold wall, tracing the carved letters of Samuel's name. Suddenly, she imagined him, small, hungry, shivering in the dark, scratching his name into stone so the world would know he existed. Her breath hitched. Samuel hadn't died peacefully. He had suffered, abandoned by adults too fearful or selfish to care. Emily's heart pounded with anger and sorrow. She whispered into the stillness, I see you, Samuel. I won't forget you. For a moment, the silence shifted. The breeze stirred the dust, carrying a faint sound, like a child's sigh of relief. Emily closed her eyes. Whether it was imagination or something more, she knew. Samuel's story demanded to be told. Back in her classroom, Emily struggled to focus on the lesson. Instead of lecturing about historical events, she tried something different. She told her students a fictional story about a boy long ago, a child ignored by his town, erased when he vanished. To her surprise, hands shot up. One boy admitted he often felt invisible at home, overshadowed by siblings. A quiet girl revealed she wished someone would notice her drawings. Another confessed he ate lunch alone every day. Emily listened, her heart heavy. Samuel's story wasn't just about the past. It was happening still. Different names, different children, but the same pain of being unseen. In that moment, she realized, sharing Samuel's truth could become more than history. It could teach compassion now. Emily wrote an article for the local paper, titling it The Forgotten Boy of 1901. She included the photo, Clara's diary excerpts, and the carvings at the workhouse. The response was mixed. Some residents accused her of dredging up superstition. That story was buried for a reason, one man sneered at the grocery store. But others, especially the elderly, grew quiet and thoughtful. An old woman at church whispered, "My grandmother mentioned a cursed boy, but she never said his name." The silence of a century began to crack. Samuel Reed was no longer just a blur in a photograph. He was becoming real again. Determined to honor Samuel, Emily organized a small memorial at the workhouse ruins. She invited townsfolk, her students, and anyone willing to listen. Children from her class read aloud simple messages. "You mattered, Samuel. We see you now." The townspeople stood quietly, many with tears streaming down their faces. Even those who had resisted at first couldn't ignore the truth anymore. For the first time in 124 years, Samuel's name was spoken in honor, not in shame or whispers. The boy in the photo, once blurred and forgotten, was finally being remembered. After the memorial, an elderly woman approached Emily. She introduced herself as Margaret, the granddaughter of one of the mill owners. Her voice shook as she confessed, "My grandfather admitted something on his deathbed. Samuel never made it out of the workhouse. They locked him in and left him there. He died inside those walls. They buried him without a grave. My family carried the shame for generations." Emily's chest ached. The truth was worse than she imagined. Samuel had not only been abandoned, he had been silenced, hidden away, erased deliberately. Margaret gripped her hand. "Please, tell his story. Set him free." With Margaret's testimony, the town finally acknowledged what had happened. Together, they raised funds for a stone marker at the workhouse ruins. On the day it was unveiled, Emily stood before the crowd, her voice trembling as she read the inscription. "Samuel Reed, 1893 to 1901, a child of Lawrence, never forgotten again." She placed her grandmother's locket on the stone, whispering, "For you." The crowd fell silent, many sobbing quietly. The air seemed lighter, as though the town itself had lifted a century-old weight. That night, Emily dreamed once more of Samuel. But this time, the dream was different. He stood in the sunlight outside the general store, no longer blurred, no longer alone. He smiled, a smile she had never seen in the photograph. In his small hands, he held a loaf of bread. "Thank you," he whispered. Then, like the fading glow of sunset, he disappeared into the light. Emily woke with tears of relief streaming down her face. She knew deep in her heart that Samuel was at peace. In the years that followed, Samuel's story became part of Emily's lessons, not as a ghost tale, but as a reminder of compassion. Her students carried the lesson forward. One boy wrote an essay titled, "Samuel Reed Taught Me to See Others." A shy girl began leaving notes of kindness for classmates who seemed lonely. Emily realized Samuel had become more than a forgotten child. He had become a quiet guardian of empathy, shaping hearts long after his time. The past had changed the present. Years later, Emily returned to the attic where it all began. She held the photograph once more, tracing the faces with her fingers. Her eyes drifted to the corner where Samuel once stood blurred. She froze. The blur was gone. His figure was clear now, sharp, smiling faintly, at peace among the townspeople. Emily gasped, her heart swelling. Whether it was her imagination or something more, she knew the truth. Telling his story had set him free. The photo from 1901 looked innocent at first glance, but within it lay a story of neglect, silence, and redemption. Samuel Reed was no longer forgotten, and neither would the children who came after him. Moral: sometimes the smallest voices, the ones ignored, erased, or silenced, teach us the greatest lessons: to see, to care, and to remember.